The morning mist hung low over the abandoned warehouse district as Captain Sarah Chen adjusted her position behind the concrete barrier. Through her scope, she counted them again. 30 armed mercenaries, just as intelligence had reported. They moved with the confidence of predators who believed they had cornered their prey. She was alone. The radio on her belt crackled once, then went silent. No backup was coming. No extraction team waited in the wings. This was exactly how she had planned it, though the mercenaries surrounding the building didn't know that yet. Sarah had been tracking this particular group for 6 months. They called themselves the Iron Wolves, and they specialized in arms trafficking through Eastern European routes. Their leader, Viktor Kozlov, was wanted in 12 countries for weapon sales to terrorist organizations. Today, that would end. The warehouse behind her contained enough military-grade weapons to supply a small war. The Iron Wolves had been using it as their primary distribution center, thinking its remote location and multiple escape routes made it perfect for their operations. They were wrong. Sarah pressed herself against the cold concrete as footsteps echoed from the western entrance. 3 men in tactical gear swept into view, their assault rifles at the ready. She recognized the formation immediately. Textbook room-clearing technique, but sloppy execution. These weren't soldiers. They were thugs with military equipment. Contact confirmed. One of them spoke into his radio. Single target, northeast corner. Female operative, appears to be alone. The response crackled back through their comms. Loud enough for Sarah to hear. Copy that. All units converge on the warehouse. We want her alive for questioning. Sarah smiled grimly. They wanted answers, but they wouldn't get them the way they expected. She had chosen this location carefully. The warehouse sat in the center of an industrial complex that had been abandoned for 3 years. No civilians to worry about, multiple sightlines, and most importantly, only 4 ways in or out. For most people, being surrounded in such a place would be a death sentence. For Sarah, it was a tactical advantage. Her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it quickly. Package delivered. Timer starts in 60 seconds. 60 seconds to get into position for Phase 2. Sarah moved with practiced silence, keeping low as she relocated to the southern side of the warehouse. The mercenaries were still positioning themselves, confident that their superior numbers meant an easy victory. She counted their movements, memorizing patrol patterns and identifying their command structure through their radio chatter. Victor's voice cut through the radio noise. Remember, we need her alive. She's the only one who can tell us how they found our operation. If only he knew the truth. The Iron Wolves had been careful to hide their activities, but not careful enough. Sarah's unit had been tracking them using satellite surveillance, financial records, and good old-fashioned human intelligence. But there was more to this mission than just shutting down an arms trafficking ring. 3 weeks ago, the Iron Wolves had acquired something that didn't belong to them. A prototype weapons guidance system that had been stolen from a NATO research facility. The system was still in its experimental phase, but in the wrong hands, it could make basic rockets as accurate as precision missiles. Sarah wasn't here just to arrest criminals. She was here to prevent a potential catastrophe. Her earpiece crackled with a different frequency, her real communications channel. Raven. This is Control. Package confirmed in position. Copy. Control, she whispered back. Beginning engagement in 30 seconds. Sarah pulled out a small device that looked like a smartphone but served a very different purpose. With a few quick taps, she activated signal jammers positioned around the warehouse complex. The mercenaries' radio communications would now be scrambled, cutting off their coordination. The confusion started almost immediately. Base, do you copy? Base. Respond. The voice came from somewhere to her left. Growing more frustrated as the static increased, Sarah moved again. This time to a position that gave her clear sight lines to 3 of the building entrances. She pulled out her rifle. A custom-modified sniper weapon designed for close to medium-range precision work. 20-round magazine, subsonic ammunition, integrated suppressor. Perfect for what came next. The first mercenary appeared at the eastern entrance. moving cautiously but still too exposed. Sarah's shot took him down with barely a whisper of sound. He dropped behind cover, clutching his shoulder. Wounded, not dead. She could have killed him easily, but that wasn't the plan. Confusion rippled through the Iron Wolves' ranks. Without radio communications, they couldn't coordinate their response to her attack. Some moved toward her last known position while others held their ground, unsure of what was happening. Sarah relocated again, this time to the warehouse's loading dock area. From here, she could see the Western team advancing on the building. 4 men in a tight formation, moving with discipline that surprised her. These weren't all thugs after all. Her second shot wounded the point man, causing the formation to scatter for cover. Again, a precise shoulder shot that would put him out of action without killing him. The psychological effect was immediate. They knew they were facing a skilled sniper, but they couldn't tell where the shots were coming from. "She's picking us off one by one," she heard one of them shout to his teammates. "We need to coordinate our approach." But coordination was exactly what Sarah had taken away from them. She checked her watch. 45 minutes until the package activated. Everything was proceeding according to plan. But she needed to apply more pressure to force the Iron Wolves into making mistakes. Sarah moved to a new position and waited. Patience was one of her greatest weapons. While the mercenaries grew more frustrated and anxious, she remained calm and focused. This was what she had trained for during 12 years of special operations service. Her third shot came from a completely different angle, taking down another mercenary with a precise leg wound. The psychological pressure was building. They knew she was out there, knew she was skilled enough to hit them at will, but they couldn't locate her or communicate effectively with each other. Victor's voice cut through the chaos, shouting orders that his men could barely hear over the radio static. "Forget the radios. Use hand signals. Converge on the warehouse from all sides." Sarah smiled. Victor was making exactly the mistake she had hoped for. When facing a sniper, the worst tactical decision is to advance across open ground with predictable movement patterns. But panic was setting in among the Iron Wolves, and panic led to poor decisions. She repositioned again, this time to an elevated position on the warehouse's fire escape. From here, she could see the entire complex and track the movement of all remaining mercenaries. 26 men, minus the 3 she had wounded, plus Victor somewhere in command. The radio static cleared for a moment, and she heard Victor's voice again. "I don't care how good she is. She's just one person. We have her outnumbered." That was when Sarah activated the second phase of her plan. The small explosive charges she had placed around the complex weren't designed to kill anyone. Instead, they created smoke screens at key choke points, further limiting the mercenaries' ability to coordinate their movements. The smoke also provided her with additional concealment as she moved between positions. Through her scope, Sarah saw 3 mercenaries attempting to enter the warehouse through a side door. She let them proceed. They would find exactly what she wanted them to find inside. Her earpiece crackled again. "Raven, thermal imaging shows movement inside the warehouse. Confirm your position." "I'm external," she replied. "Let them explore." Inside the warehouse, the 3 mercenaries would discover that the weapons cache they thought they were protecting was gone. In its place, they would find detailed surveillance photos of their entire operation, financial records of their transactions, and evidence that their security had been compromised weeks ago. More importantly, they would find a recording device that had been transmitting their conversations to law enforcement agencies in 6 countries. The Iron Wolves hadn't been hiding their operation. They had been broadcasting it to the very people trying to stop them. Sarah's mission wasn't just to capture these criminals. It was to demonstrate that their entire organization had been penetrated and monitored. When word spread through the international arms trafficking community, it would send a message that nowhere was safe from investigation. But first, she had to deal with the immediate situation. Victor had finally abandoned his command position and was moving toward the warehouse personally. Sarah could see him through her scope. A tall man with graying hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Behind him, 6 of his best men advanced in a professional formation. This was the group she had been waiting for. Sarah took careful aim and fired 4 shots in rapid succession. Each shot was precisely placed to wound. not kill. 4 mercenaries dropped behind cover, clutching wounded arms and legs. Victor and the remaining 2 men dove for cover behind a concrete barrier. "Show yourself," Victor shouted across the complex. "You want to fight us? Have the courage to face us directly." Sarah considered his challenge for a moment. Part of her mission was psychological warfare, demonstrating the futility of running arms trafficking operations in an age of advanced surveillance and precision military action. Sometimes, a direct confrontation served that purpose better than hiding in shadows. She activated her voice amplification system and spoke clearly across the complex. "Viktor Kozlov, you are surrounded. Your radio communications have been compromised. Your weapons cache has been seized. Your financial records have been recovered. Surrender now, and your men will receive medical treatment." The silence that followed was complete, except for the sound of wind through the abandoned buildings. Then Victor's laughter echoed across the complex. "You think you have won? You are still just one person against all of us. Even if you are military, even if you are very good at this, you cannot fight 30 men alone." Sarah checked her watch again. 38 minutes until activation. She spoke again, her voice carrying clearly through the amplification system. "You're wrong about one thing, Victor. I'm not here to fight you." "Then why are you here?" "I'm here to arrest you." More laughter from Victor's position. "One person cannot arrest 30. "You're right," Sarah replied. "One person can't arrest 30. But one person can hold 30 criminals in place long enough for the real arrest team to arrive." The silence that followed was different this time. Sarah could practically feel Victor's confusion and growing concern. Her earpiece crackled with an update. "Raven, package activation in 35 minutes. Confirm status. All targets contained," she replied quietly. Proceeding to final phase. Sarah climbed down from her elevated position and began moving systematically around the complex. She wasn't hunting the mercenaries now. She was herding them. Every shot she fired, every movement she made, was designed to push them toward the center of the complex, away from the escape routes. The wounded men were slowing down their teammates, just as she had planned. Carrying injured people while under sniper fire was exhausting and psychologically draining. The Iron Wolves were becoming more defensive and less mobile with each passing minute. 28 minutes until activation. Sarah paused behind a shipping container to check her equipment. 3 magazines remaining for her rifle, plus her sidearm. More than enough for what came next. She also verified her emergency beacon. If something went wrong, extraction was still possible, though it would compromise the mission's psychological impact. She moved to a new position that allowed her to observe Victor's current location. He was still behind the concrete barrier with his 2 remaining men, but they were looking increasingly desperate. The other mercenaries scattered throughout the complex were calling out to each other, trying to coordinate without radio communication. Sarah made her decision. It was time to accelerate the timeline. She activated a different frequency on her communication device and spoke clearly. "Control. This is Raven. Request immediate activation of package. All targets are contained and positioned." "Copy, Raven. Activating package now. ETA, 12 minutes. Sarah smiled and began her final repositioning move. In 12 minutes, Viktor Kozlov and his Iron Wolves would understand exactly why she had come alone. Sarah moved through the shadows between abandoned buildings with practiced silence. The 12-minute countdown had begun, and she needed to keep Victor and his men exactly where they were until the package activated. But first, she had a message to deliver. She activated her voice amplification system again. "Victor, I know you're wondering what package I keep mentioning. Let me explain what's about to happen." Her words echoed across the complex, and she could see several mercenaries freeze in position, waiting to hear what came next. 6 months ago, your organization made a mistake. You stole a NATO prototype guidance system from a research facility in Prague. Did you really think no one would notice? Contents. Through her scope, Sarah watched Victor's body language change. His confident posture shifted to something more defensive. He knew exactly what she was talking about. That guidance system contains a tracking device that activates under specific conditions, Sarah continued. Conditions like being brought to a central location where multiple units of stolen military equipment are stored together. She paused to let that information sink in before delivering the final piece of the puzzle. The tracking device doesn't just send location data. It sends detailed intelligence about everyone present, everyone involved, and every piece of equipment in the immediate area. And that signal has been broadcasting for the last 48 minutes. The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah had been part of the team that designed the tracking protocol. Her background wasn't just special operations. She also held advanced degrees in electrical engineering and computer science. When the prototype was stolen, she had volunteered for this mission because she knew exactly how to activate its hidden features. Victor's voice finally broke the silence. "You're lying. If such a device existed, we would have detected it." "Your technical team did detect something," Sarah replied. "Check your records from 2 days ago. They found an unusual electromagnetic signature coming from the guidance system, remember? They assumed it was normal operational emissions." More silence. Sarah knew that Victor was remembering that exact conversation because she had been listening to their communications for weeks. "The tracking device activates when it detects specific radio frequencies," she continued. "The same frequencies used by advanced military communication equipment, like the radios you and your men are carrying." Through her scope, Sarah watched several mercenaries look down at their radio equipment with growing alarm. The psychological pressure was building exactly as planned. The signal has been broadcasting to every NATO intelligence service in Europe. Right now, teams from 6 different countries are converging on this location. Military teams, not police. Teams that shoot first and ask questions later. Sarah checked her chronometer. 10 minutes until package activation. She began moving again, but this time her movement was different. Instead of hunting or hiding, she was positioning herself for extraction. The mission was entering its final phase, and she needed to be ready for what came next. Victor's voice carried a note of desperation now. "Even if what you say is true, you are still here with us. Whatever happens to us will happen to you." "No, Victor, it won't," Sarah replied calmly. "Because I have something you don't have." "What?" "An extraction plan." Sarah activated a small device on her belt, and suddenly a bright infrared beacon began flashing from her position. The beacon was invisible to the naked eye, but it would show up clearly on the thermal imaging equipment used by military aircraft. 8 minutes until package activation. Through her earpiece, Sarah heard the sound she had been waiting for. Rotors. Still distant, but approaching fast. The sound was barely audible now, but it would grow much louder very soon. She moved to her final position, a clear area behind the warehouse where a helicopter could land safely. From here, she could still observe Victor and his men, but she was positioned for rapid extraction. Sarah's communication device crackled with an update. "Raven, this is Lightning 6-4. We have visual on your beacon. ETA. 6 minutes to your position." "Copy, Lightning 6-4, she replied. "Be advised. 30 hostile targets contained in the complex. Several are wounded but still armed. Understood. Extraction team is standing by." Victor had heard the helicopter now. His voice carried across the complex with new urgency. "She's not alone. The helicopter is coming for her." The remaining mercenaries began moving with renewed purpose, but their movements were panicked rather than tactical. They were trying to reach Sarah's position before the helicopter arrived, but they were making every mistake possible in their haste. Sarah calmly adjusted her rifle scope and began picking off the fastest-moving targets. Each shot was still precisely placed to wound rather than kill, but the effect was to slow down their advance and create more chaos in their ranks. 6 minutes until package activation. 2 minutes until helicopter arrival. "Victor," Sarah called out, "your men are going to get themselves killed if they keep advancing like this. I can wound them, or the helicopter crew can kill them. Your choice." The advance stopped. Through her scope, Sarah could see Victor arguing with his remaining men. Some wanted to surrender, while others wanted to fight to the end. The internal conflict was exactly what she had hoped to create. Sarah's earpiece crackled again. Raven, Lightning 6-4 is 2 minutes out. Be advised. We have multiple fast movers approaching from the southeast. NATO response teams inbound to your location. Fast movers meant fighter jets. The package activation was bringing more than just arrest teams. Copy. Lightning 6-4. I'll be ready for pickup. Sarah checked her equipment one final time. Her mission was almost complete. But the most dangerous part was still ahead. Extracting from a hostile area while under fire required perfect timing and coordination. The sound of rotors was clearly audible now, and she could see the helicopter approaching from the northwest. It was a military transport, painted in standard NATO colors, with door gunners visible on both sides. 4 minutes until package activation. Victor's voice carried desperation now. Wait, if we surrender, what guarantee do we have that we will be treated properly? Sarah considered his question. In truth, the Iron Wolves had committed enough crimes to warrant life imprisonment in multiple countries, but the mission's success depended on delivering a specific message to the international arms trafficking community. Victor, you and your men will be arrested and tried according to international law. Your cooperation in providing information about other trafficking networks will be taken into consideration during sentencing. And if we don't surrender, then you face the NATO response teams that are approaching this location. I guarantee you that they will not be as interested in taking prisoners as I have been. The helicopter was circling now, looking for the safest approach to Sarah's position. She could see the door gunners scanning the complex for threats, their weapons ready but not yet engaged. 3 minutes, until package activation. Sarah activated her beacon again, this time sending a specific signal pattern that indicated she was ready for immediate extraction. The helicopter began its descent toward her position. That was when Victor made his final mistake. Instead of surrendering or negotiating further, he ordered his remaining men to fire on the helicopter. The sound of automatic weapons filled the air as they opened fire on the aircraft. The helicopter's response was immediate and professional. The door gunners returned fire with precision that made Sarah's shooting look amateur by comparison. The difference between warning shots and suppressing fire became very clear very quickly. Sarah took cover behind a concrete barrier as the firefight erupted around her. This wasn't part of the plan, but it wasn't unexpected either. She had hoped Victor would be smart enough to surrender, but she had prepared for the possibility that he would choose to fight. Her earpiece crackled with urgent communication. Raven, Lightning 6-4, taking fire from multiple positions. Can you mark hostile targets? Negative, Sarah replied. Maintain suppressing fire and prepare for emergency extraction. I'm moving to alternate pickup zone. She had planned for this contingency too. While the primary landing zone was compromised, there was a secondary position, 300 meters to the east, where the helicopter could hover long enough for her to climb aboard. 2 minutes until package activation. Sarah began moving toward the alternate extraction point, but she wasn't running. Even under fire, she moved with calculated precision, using available cover and staying aware of her surroundings. This was what 12 years of special operations experience looked like under pressure. The firefight continued behind her as she relocated. The helicopter's door gunners were keeping Victor's men pinned down, but they were also running low on ammunition. Military extractions were designed to be fast, not prolonged engagements. Sarah reached the alternate pickup zone just as the package timer reached 1 minute. She activated her beacon again and watched the helicopter begin moving toward her new position. That was when the first fighter jet appeared on the horizon. The aircraft was barely visible, but the sound of its engines carried clearly across the complex. Sarah knew that Victor and his men could hear it too. In 60 seconds, this abandoned warehouse complex would be swarming with NATO military forces. Her earpiece crackled with a new voice. All units, this is Sword Lead. We have multiple targets on thermal imaging at the complex. Confirm friendly positions before we engage. Sword Lead, this is Lightning 6-4, friendly extraction in progress. Mark position with IR beacon. Sarah looked back toward Victor's last known position. The firefight had stopped, and an unusual quiet had settled over the complex. Through her scope, She could see movement among the concrete barriers where the iron wolves were sheltering. 30 seconds until package activation. The helicopter reached her position and began to hover 10 feet above the ground. A rope dropped from the side door, and Sarah could see the extraction specialist preparing to pull her up. That was when Victor's voice carried across the complex one final time. "We surrender. Cease fire. We surrender." Sarah grabbed the rope and began climbing as her earpiece filled with radio traffic from the approaching NATO forces. Multiple teams were converging on the location. Arrest teams, technical specialists, intelligence analysts, and medical personnel. As the helicopter lifted off with Sarah aboard, she looked down at the complex one last time. She could see white flags being waved from multiple positions as the Iron Wolves attempted to surrender before the fighter jets arrived. Package activation. 0. The hidden tracking device in the stolen guidance system sent its final burst of data to NATO intelligence services across Europe. The signal contained detailed information about every person, every weapon, and every piece of equipment present at the complex. It also contained 6 months of recorded communications and financial transaction data, but most importantly, it contained proof that NATO could track stolen military technology anywhere in the world and strike back with precision and overwhelming force. Sarah spoke into her microphone as the helicopter gained altitude. "Control. This is Raven. Package activation confirmed. All targets contained and ready for processing. Copy, Raven. Excellent work. The message will be received loud and clear." As they flew away from the complex, Sarah could see military vehicles approaching from multiple directions. Ground teams, technical specialists, medical units, and intelligence analysts. Everyone needed to process 30 captured arms traffickers and secure a major weapons cache. But there was still one more element of the mission to complete. Within hours, word would spread through the international arms trafficking community that the Iron Wolves had been taken down by a single operator, backed by overwhelming NATO response capability. The message would be clear. Stealing military technology brought consequences that no criminal organization could escape. Sarah settled back in the helicopter seat and checked her equipment. The mission had been a complete success, but she knew that Victor still didn't understand the full scope of what had happened to his organization. He would learn the truth during his interrogation. He would discover that NATO had been monitoring the Iron Wolves for months, that their communications had been compromised, that their financial records had been accessed, and that their entire network was now exposed. Most importantly, he would learn that the single operator who had taken down his 30-man organization wasn't acting alone at all. She was the visible tip of a massive intelligence and military operation designed to send a message that would resonate throughout the international criminal community. Sarah smiled as the helicopter carried her away from the complex. Phase 1 of Operation Lone Wolf was complete. But Operation Lone Wolf had 3 phases, and the second phase was about to begin in arms trafficking networks across Eastern Europe. Word of Victor's capture would spread quickly, and other trafficking organizations would soon discover that their communications and financial records were also being monitored. The single operator approach wasn't just about tactical efficiency, it was psychological warfare designed to create maximum impact with minimal resources. When criminals learned that one person could take down 30 armed mercenaries, they would begin to wonder what larger forces were watching them. Sarah's earpiece crackled with an update from Control. "Raven? Preliminary intelligence indicates that 3 other trafficking networks are already shutting down operations in response to signals intelligence from today's mission. Copy, Control. Ready for Phase 2 briefing upon return." The helicopter banked toward the NATO base where Sarah would debrief her mission and prepare for the next operation. Behind them, the warehouse complex was now swarming with military personnel processing the most successful counterterrorism operation of the year. But for Sarah, it was just another day at work. Tomorrow, there would be another criminal organization that needed to learn the same lesson that Viktor Kozlov was learning today. In the modern world, military technology theft brought swift, precise, and overwhelming response. The message was simple: steal from NATO, and NATO will find you. No matter where you hide, no matter how many people protect you, no matter how careful you think you are. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person with the right skills, the right equipment, and the right support to bring down an entire criminal network. Sarah checked her watch as the helicopter carried her toward the next phase of Operation Lone Wolf. Victor's capture was just the beginning. 48 hours after the warehouse operation, Sarah sat in the secure briefing room at NATO's Joint Intelligence Center in Brussels. Around the table were representatives from 6 different countries, all studying the results of Operation Lone Wolf with intense interest. The numbers spoke for themselves. 37 arms trafficking operations have suspended activities across Eastern Europe, reported Colonel Martinez from Spanish intelligence. Our signals intercepts show panic spreading through the entire network. Sarah listened as each representative shared similar reports. The psychological impact of a single operator taking down Viktor Kozlov's organization had exceeded every projection. Criminal networks that had operated with confidence for years were suddenly afraid that they were being watched. But the real revelation was still coming. "Captain Chen," said General Morrison, the operations commanding officer, "please explain to our international colleagues why the lone operative approach was so crucial to this mission's success." Sarah stood and activated the presentation screen. The first slide showed a map of Europe with dozens of red dots, marking known arms trafficking operations. Ladies and gentlemen, the traditional approach to dismantling international criminal networks is to hit multiple targets simultaneously. This approach has one major weakness. It allows remaining networks to disappear and rebuild. She clicked to the next slide, showing intelligence intercepts from the past 48 hours. The lone operative approach creates a different psychological response. When criminals see 30 armed men defeated by one person, they don't think about the tactical details. They think about what forces must be behind that person. Sarah clicked again, revealing recorded communications from trafficking networks across Europe. These are actual conversations we've intercepted since the warehouse operation. Listen to what they're saying. The first recording played in accented English. "If they can send one woman to destroy Victor's entire organization, what can they send after us? Maybe we should close operations for a while." The second recording was in German, with subtitles. "The Americans must have new technology we don't know about. How else could one person track down Victor and defeat 30 armed men?" Sarah clicked to the next slide. The beauty of the lone operative approach is that it forces criminal organizations to overestimate our capabilities. They know what they saw, but they can't explain how it was possible. This creates fear of the unknown. She paused to let the implications sink in before continuing. Fear of the unknown is more powerful than fear of the known. If we had sent 50 NATO soldiers to arrest Victor, other criminal organizations would understand the threat and adapt their security measures accordingly. But when they see one person accomplish what should require a small army, they begin to question everything they know about modern intelligence and military capabilities. General Morrison nodded approvingly. "Captain Chen, please explain the technical aspects of the operation." Sarah clicked to a new slide showing the stolen guidance system. The tracking device we installed in the prototype wasn't just a location tracker. It was a comprehensive intelligence gathering system designed to activate when brought into contact with other stolen military equipment. She highlighted specific technical details on the screen. The device used electromagnetic field analysis to identify every piece of military hardware within a 2-kilometer radius. It analyzed radio communications to map the criminal organization's command structure. It even recorded financial transaction data from electronic devices carried by the targets. Colonel Reeves from British intelligence leaned forward. "How long had the device been collecting this intelligence?" 6 months, Sarah replied. "From the moment Victor's people stole the prototype, we knew exactly where it was and what it was seeing. We allowed them to think they had successfully stolen valuable technology, when in reality, they had planted our surveillance system at the heart of their operation." She clicked to show surveillance photos and communication intercepts. "We knew Victor's daily schedule, his security protocols, the location of his weapons caches, his financial networks, and the identities of everyone in his organization. The warehouse operation wasn't a raid, it was a controlled demonstration." The room was silent as the implications became clear. "But why reveal this now?" asked Dr. Hoffman from German intelligence. "Wouldn't it be more valuable to keep the surveillance capability secret?" Sarah smiled. That's the final element of the psychological warfare strategy. We want other criminal organizations to know that their stolen military equipment might be tracking them. We want them to know that NATO can turn their greatest prizes into our intelligence assets. She clicked to the final slide, showing real-time intelligence from operations across Europe. In the past 48 hours, 17 arms trafficking organizations have attempted to return or destroy military equipment they stole from NATO facilities. They're so afraid of being tracked that they're voluntarily giving up millions of dollars in stolen weapons. General Morrison stood to address the room. Operation Lone Wolf was never about arresting Viktor Kozlov. It was about sending a message that would destabilize the entire illegal arms trade in Europe. By demonstrating that a single operator could defeat 30 armed criminals, we've created the impression that NATO's capabilities are far beyond what criminal organizations can comprehend or counter, Sarah added. The psychological impact is measurable. Our intelligence intercepts show that recruitment for arms trafficking organizations has dropped by 60% in the past 2 days. Criminal networks are questioning their own security, their own intelligence, and their own ability to operate safely. Colonel Martinez raised an important question. How do we know that this fear will be sustained? Won't criminal organizations eventually realize that the operation was a one-time demonstration? Sarah clicked back to the surveillance data. They won't realize it was a demonstration because it wasn't. Operation Lone Wolf is an ongoing program. I'm not the only operative trained for these missions. She highlighted intelligence reports from across NATO member countries. Similar operations are planned for criminal networks in the Balkans, the Baltic states, and the Mediterranean. Each operation will be slightly different, but the core message will remain the same. NATO can strike anywhere, anytime, with minimal resources and maximum effect. The implications were staggering. Instead of requiring massive military operations to combat international crime, NATO could now use psychological warfare and precision strikes to achieve strategic objectives with minimal resources. General Morrison concluded the briefing. Operation Lone Wolf represents a new paradigm in counterterrorism and international law enforcement. By combining advanced technology, psychological warfare, and precision military action, we can achieve strategic objectives that would previously have required major international operations. After the briefing ended, Sarah remained in the conference room to review the detailed intelligence reports that had come in since her mission. The psychological impact was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Her secure phone rang with an update from Victor's interrogation. Captain Chen, this is Agent Harrison from the Prisoner Processing Center. Viktor Kozlov is asking to speak with you personally. Sarah considered the request. Normally, captured criminals had no contact with the operatives who arrested them, but Viktor's case was different. He represented a chance to deliver the psychological warfare message directly to the international criminal community. Approved, she replied. Set up a secure video conference. 20 minutes later, Sarah was looking at Viktor Kozlov on her computer screen. The arms trafficking leader appeared to have aged years in just 2 days. His confident demeanor was completely gone, replaced by something approaching fear. You lied to me, he said without preamble. About what? Viktor, you said you came alone to arrest me. But you had fighter jets, helicopter support, intelligence teams, technical specialists. You had an entire military operation backing you up. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Actually, Viktor, I told you the truth. I came alone to arrest you. Everything else was what we call consequences. I don't understand. You stole military technology from NATO. That technology contained tracking and surveillance devices. When you activated the prototype guidance system, you broadcast your location and activities to every NATO intelligence service in Europe. The military response wasn't planned as part of your arrest. It was the automatic consequence of stealing NATO technology. Viktor was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. So when you said you came alone, he began. I meant exactly that, Sarah interrupted. One person, with the right training and equipment, can accomplish what looks impossible to people who don't understand modern military capabilities. But the backup forces, the aircraft, the intelligence support, Those are always available when needed. The difference between military operations and criminal activities is that we have unlimited backup, and you don't. Sarah let that sink in before delivering the final message. Victor, your interrogation will be recorded and shared with international law enforcement agencies. When you describe how one person defeated your entire organization, other criminals will hear that recording. When you explain how NATO technology tracked your every move, other criminal organizations will know that their stolen equipment might be doing the same thing. Victor's face showed genuine fear now. You're using me to send a message. That's exactly what I'm doing. And you're going to help me send that message because you want other criminals to know the truth about what they're facing. Sarah's tone became more serious. Victor, arms trafficking kills thousands of innocent people every year. The weapons you sell end up in the hands of terrorists, drug cartels, and violent extremists. When you help us send this message, you're helping to save lives. She paused to let that sink in before continuing. Your cooperation in describing NATO's capabilities to other criminal organizations will be taken into consideration during your sentencing. Your choice. Victor nodded slowly. What do you want me to tell them? The truth. Tell them that NATO can track stolen military technology anywhere in the world. Tell them that a single operator with the right support can defeat any criminal organization. Tell them that the days of operating with impunity are over. The conversation lasted another 30 minutes, with Victor asking detailed questions about how he had been tracked and monitored. Sarah answered honestly, knowing that every detail would spread through the international criminal community and multiply the psychological impact of Operation Lone Wolf. After ending the video call, Sarah reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The results continued to exceed expectations. Arms trafficking operations across 3 continents were scaling back or shutting down entirely. Criminal organizations were destroying stolen military equipment rather than risk being tracked. Recruitment for illegal weapons smuggling had dropped dramatically as potential criminals decided the risks were too high. But perhaps most importantly, legitimate intelligence sharing between NATO countries had improved significantly. The success of Operation Lone Wolf had demonstrated the value of international cooperation and advanced technology in combating global criminal networks. Sarah's secure phone rang again. This time, it was General Morrison. Captain Chen, we have 3 more trafficking operations that need the lone operative treatment. Are you ready for the next phase of Operation Lone Wolf? Sarah looked out the window at the Brussels skyline, thinking about criminal organizations around the world who still believed they could operate without consequences. Yes, sir. Where do we start? Marseille. There's a weapons smuggling network operating out of the Old Port District. They've been trafficking stolen NATO equipment to North Africa. Intelligence suggests they have 40 armed men and multiple escape routes. Sarah smiled. Sounds familiar. When do I deploy? Tonight. The psychological momentum from Victor's case is building, and we want to capitalize on it while criminal organizations are still reacting to the first operation. As Sarah prepared for her next mission, she reflected on the true power of Operation Lone Wolf. It wasn't about individual tactical capability, though her skills were essential. It wasn't about advanced technology, though the equipment played a crucial role. The real power was in the message. In the modern world, criminal organizations faced opponents with unlimited resources, advanced technology, and the willingness to use precision force anywhere in the world. When criminals realized they were fighting not just individual operatives but entire military and intelligence communities, many of them would decide the risks were too high. Those who continued their illegal activities would do so with the knowledge that they were being watched, tracked, and analyzed by forces they couldn't see or comprehend. Sarah packed her equipment for the Marseille operation. 40 armed criminals in a port city with multiple escape routes. To most people, it would seem like an impossible task for one person. But Sarah Chen wasn't most people. She was a NATO Special Operations captain with advanced degrees in engineering and computer science, backed by the intelligence and military resources of 29 allied nations. Most importantly, she carried the psychological impact of Operation Lone Wolf, the knowledge that criminal organizations around the world were questioning their own security and wondering what capabilities they were really facing. The arms trafficking network in Marseille was about to learn what Viktor Kozlov had learned. In the modern world, Sometimes all it takes to bring down 30 criminals is one person who arrives alone. But that person is never really alone. Behind every lone operative stood the combined resources of NATO intelligence services, military forces, and technological capabilities that criminal organizations couldn't match, couldn't predict, and couldn't escape. As her transport aircraft lifted off toward Marseille, Sarah reviewed the intelligence files on her next targets. They had no idea what was coming for them, just as Victor had no idea until it was too late. The message of Operation Lone Wolf was spreading across the international criminal community. NATO could strike anywhere, anytime, with surgical precision and overwhelming backup. And sometimes, all that overwhelming power arrived in the form of a single person who chose to come alone. Sarah checked her equipment one final time as the aircraft headed south toward France. Tomorrow, the criminal organization in Marseille would discover why arriving alone was the most effective psychological warfare tactic in modern counterterrorism. Phase 2 of Operation Lone Wolf was about to begin.